Everyone, very good morning. Shall we begin the session? Today's topic is frames, that is a HTML frame. In the last class, we have finished with the HTML forms. We just started out with the frame, but not we have completed with the frame. So, what is a frame? That is a division of the same HTML page into the multiple parts. Same page will be divided into multiple percentage or the multiple pixels, that is known as frames. So this is a controversial element in the HTML, that is a frame set. And this frame set divides up the browser display area into the rectangular regions, each rendering its own HTML document. And this frame set tag defines the number of frames the display or it will display that will be broken up into their sizes and the proportion. And we use the frame set tag for defining for display, and we use the frames tag that allows the user tells the browser which web page to request for each frame when initialize the web page. And once a frame set page is loaded with all its individual frames, the user can work with the page, and this can also make the hyperlink in any of the displayed pages. So whenever we use frames, that tells the browser how it is used or which web page on the request for each frame when initializing the page. And once a frame set page is loaded up with all its individual frames uploaded as well, so the user can work with the pages. User can work how many pages do you select, how many hyperlinks that will be displayed in the web page. And this link might specify a new document in the frame that will specify how it is used and how it is loaded with the name frame set. But the most common use of the frames is to define a table of content with a document frame, and the web page is a table of content frame that is typically a long list of the table of content entry. So whatever the entries we give, whatever the table we give, that makes a long list of the table entries, each with the hyperlink to an area of the website. So we are using the websites, we are using an area that will be given with the frame set that typically contains entries with the hyperlink. So each of these link or each of the link that specifies the main document that is used with the main document frame or the target where the link to a page should be rendered. And this output or whatever the output that is produced over here that is used with the Java doc application. That is another excellent example of the frame because we are using columns, we are using the rows of the frame set tags. The parameter calls and rows of the frameset tag defines the initial size and the number of frames in the set. For example, the value 2050, then asterisk. That means there are two parts, one is the 20, one is the 50, 17. The next part is 30, that is automatically taken by 3. This. So this specifies the 3 frames to be defined. The first occupies 20% of the main screen, that is the 20% of the main 100. Second, 50% of the main 100, and the third remaining 30%. So the main frame is divided into 3 parts, 20, 50 and the 30. And instead of the percentage, we can also give with the pixels values. And of course, it is very entirely possible for a frame to contain another frame set. This also allows designers a little more freedom from a simple matrix frame design that can be used to produce any combination of the rectangular regions in the browser history. So the following HTML page defines some sample, whatever the sample we have given, that sample will be used like a page that displays the percentage of the marks, displays the occupies what percentage they are used, what percentage they are carried out. Which the frame set columns equals to 2080. There are two parts of the column that is divided, one is the 20, one is the 80. And the frame name equals to TOC, source equals to TOC.html. So in the first frame, now first of all it is divided into columns, two parts. So first frame have a name TOC, whatever the name we are given. But the source is very important. Which file you displayed in the first 20%, that is the doc.html. In the next part, that is the main doc, that is the name, and the SRC is intro.html. So again there are two parts. 20% is carried out by the doc.html and the 80% is carried out by the intro.html. then frameset will be closed, frameset tag will be closed. So in this frameset, yes, frameset is an tag. In this, there is one attribute that is a columns. We can also use those, but we can in this example we can use the columns. Now this column will be divided into two parts. This column will be divided into two parts. We can say 20 and the 80 as for this example. And now we have to specify what percentage, what will be the content of this 20% first, then 80%. So first contains one frame, that name is talk.html. The name is given with the src. The next frame, that name is given with the src, that is the intro.html. Then frame set will be closed. Now these names are specified for each frame, and a link in the table of the content would also specify the main dot as the target for the link. For example, clicking on the following link that will display the cover page or display the page in the main document frame. The table of the content frame would remain the same. This is the A, then target equals to main doc, href equals to one of the name file, that is the chapter1.html, and chapter1 web application basics, then A. Now, what is the linking point? What is the in the blue color? That is the chapter1.web application basics. Now this will be also be closed. This will mandatorily be closed by the A tag. That is the closing of it. So one is the A, then name, then A will be closed. Now let's move to the next part. So we are using one of the frame, we are using one of the target that is explained over here by using the A tag, anchor tag, and this frame set web page is also displayed. It typically does not have content, does not contain any content like any other web pages, but we have a that is divided into the multiple parts, and most of us we do contain enough pages, enough content that tells the browser how it is done, how it will do, and how it will require on the internet that is supported by the browser. And the controversy over frames center on the user interface preferences and the complexity. Some people don't like frames, but some users raises the level of complexity of it. As of now, multiple web pages are interacting with the user at the same time. This is the frame that will be carried out with the data that will be carried out with the content. Now, when we talk about the application that uses the enabling technology, enabling means we can say the digital technology that makes the content, or navigation technology that makes the content dynamic, and to allow the user of the system to affect business logic on the server. But the difference between the website and the web application is the subtle, that relies on the ability of a user to affect the state of the business logic on the server. Whatever the business logic they have, whatever the data they have to affect, they have to take the business logic on the server. And certainly, if no business logic exists on a server, so system should not be termed as a web application. They should not be used as a business application. And for these systems on which the web server or the application server uses a web browser for these inputs, that also allows the business logic to be affected via web browsers. This logic will be considered out as a web application, but the simplest web application that users will have to impart more than the navigational request information. And this web application also users also enter a varied range of the input data, simple data, text box selections, or even binary and the file information. The distinction becomes even more subtle in the case of the search engine, on which the users to enter in relatively sophisticated search criteria. And search engines that are the website simply accept this information, use it in the form of the select database, and return the result. And whenever the user finishes the database system, there is no noticeable change in the state of the search engine, but except that there are, of course, in the usage logs and the loophole logs hit counter. This is in contrast with the web application that, for example, is accept the online registration number. So whatever web page they are carried out, they accept that information, they accept that website information that includes with the registration information from the user that have a different state, that have a different value when the user finishes using the application. And the architecture for a website is straightforward. It contains the special principal components of a website. Now, what are the various components of a website? That may be a web server, that may be a network connection, that may be a client browser. So there are three parts in this. One is a browser, one is a network connection, one is a server. And web applications also includes an application server. This application server will be handled as an application criteria that enables the system to manage the business logic and the state. And this will manage how to manage the system, how to build the logic for the business logic and the state. Now, one of the main challenge of the web application is the managing client information, client state on the server, that is the client state management. Owing to the connectionless nature of the client and server communication, we also use to keep track of the each client request and to associate it with the previous request, since each and every web page request establishes and breaks a completely new set of connections. And managing the state is also important for many applications. A single use case scenario often involves navigating through a number of the web pages. And without a state management mechanisms, you have to continually supply all the previous information entered for these new web pages, even for the applications. Now, the next topic is the client state management. How the clients deal with the servers, how they are managing on the server. So owing to the connectionless nature of the client and the server, that is not a very easy task to keep a track of the each and every client request and to associate with the previous request. So since each and every web browser has to gain the request, so there makes a completely new set of the connections. So for this, to address this problem, so this W3C, now what is the W3C? Can anyone tell me? Yeah, very good. That is a World Wide Web Consortium. So this W3C has proposed an HTTP state management mechanism. This mechanism, more commonly known as the cookies, has received quite a bit of attention from privacy advocates in the past few years and will almost likely continue to as more interesting usage of the mechanisms that are found. And this book is not about the privacy concern, but rather it is focused on the technology around the web application. So I will focus on describing the technology and leave the philosophy to you. What type of philosophy that is using up? That is used for the type management, that is used for the state management, that are commonly known as the cookies. But I also makes a bit of attention from the privacy advocates in the past few years. That is more interesting facts. Now, what is a cookie? No, that's not a biscuit. So cookie is a part of the piece of the data that a web server can ask a web browser to hold on. That means whatever the information that's stored over the internet, yeah, we can say that it is a kind of the history. So that ask a web browser to hold on to and return every time the browser makes a request for HTTP. So that makes a storage purpose, that makes a information storage. Its size is so small, between 100 and the 1K, but it is limited with the HTTP header source. So content type is the HTML, and this is one of the formats that is how we can use. So there is a session ID for this. Session ID means what is the unique ID for this, and what is the path over here. Expires and it expires. date, time, including the seconds, minute, and the time zone. That may be a GMT, PST, IST. That depends. And at last there is a secure. And if the browser is configured to accept the cookie, so this line is acceptable and stored somewhere on the client's machine. That depends on the browser vendor. After that, each and every HTTP request to the server is sent back with the values, whatever the values they have, whatever the data they have, that is sent back to the values of these cookies. Now, when it is sent to a client, when it is going to a client, and cookie can have a multiple of the 6 parameters passed to it. One is a name, that is a required field, value, that is also required field, expiration date, that is also required, path, domain, requires a secure connection. And this cookie handler or header is also one of the suspected outcome that will be given, that contains a character that includes the white spaces, commas, and the semicolons. And name and the value parameters are also required, but not contain the space, commas, or the semicolon, but it requires the parameters. And this expiration date tells the browser how long to keep this information, how it will be beneficial to make this information. And whatever the domain name, whatever the path they have carried out, they are the way of determining which servers or the domain to send the cookies back. And if it is not explicitly backed up, it reports the full domain of any document that is creating the cookie. The tokenizing the cookie within a domain. Only one resources is required for requested in the domain into the path. Will the cookie will be sent out? Will be we can see that cookie will be requested out with the cookie that will get sent out to the servers. Now, when it requests a URL in the path on the same server that is given with the slash, the client sends it with the HTTP request the following. Now, the cookie, session ID 12345, color pref requested you. And when the response is returned, the server might set another cookie with set cookie, date code 8, path is order. When it requests a URL in the path order, a client sends a cookie, session ID, color preference view, rate code B. Note that all three cookies are sent with the request because the first two are in a higher path and are inherited in the mapping. And in addition to the server being able to set a cookie value, so you can also JavaScript, and this will be used for the dynamic client that describes the capability of the client-side scripting in more detail. That is why it is very sufficient to say that cookies can be set and obtained in a multiple ways, and several mechanisms, specific mechanisms for setting and assessing the cookies are typically provided by the development environment and the architecture by a single function call to an accessible object. This mechanism is not without the faults, but we can use it. That the privacy advocates point to the cookie as the primary mechanism supporting the tackling or tracking of the unknowing users across multiple websites. So whatever the user they are carried out, they are writing this chapter that will be used with the cookies on any machine. It is not mandatory that yes, that's right. Now, what is a session in this web application? Session is normally a duration, that is the time period we can say. In terms of the web application, session represents a single cohesive use of the system that involves many executable web pages and a lot of interaction with the business logic on the same application servers. So this will be included within the web page, within the interaction, that will be the business logic, that will be the application server, and before achieving this one, and the most common example of keeping the client server or the client state on the server can be found on the internet at any e-commerce site. Any website or any e-commerce site, that will be a virtual shopping cart, that may be a nice features of the online store, that may be a online customer that can be selected from the store catalog, and in this they are using up with the checks of the content of the cart in any given point of time during this session. And this feature also requires that the server be capable of maintaining some state, some client issues about a series of the web requests or the web page requests. And in this session, in this state, web application that can be maintained in the 4 common ways which requires the use of the cookies also. Now place all the states values in the cookies, place a unique key in the cookie and use with the server managed directory or the map. Include all the state values as a parameter in every URL of the system. Includes a unique key as a parameter in every URL of the system. One is the state values, one is a unique key, and use with the server managed directory or the map. And this will be placed within the cookie within the area that is limited by the size and at most 20 cookies per domain. Now let's start the session again. So these 4 points will be used and this session states in the web application are users can be maintained in the 4 ways for 4 points. So place all the states values in a cookie. First is then place a unique key in the cookie and use for the server manager dictionary or the map. Can include all the state values as parameters as in every URL of the system. Then the next is includes a unique value as a parameter in every URL of the system and used with the server managed directory of the map. So it includes the unique key as a parameter as a value of every URL. And when you place all the state values in a cookie, you are first linked by the size and at most 20 cookies per domain. And all the state data must be encoded into the simple text, no white space, no semicolons, and so on. And you can't directly use high-level objects in the comma state, session state. And a real limitation, however, is that many clients' security settings don't allow the automatic storage of the or storing of the cookie. So whatever the data, whatever the clients, whatever the settings that we have, that does not allow automatic storing of the cookie. And if the application is an internet-based application that is used as a market or the consumer market, you don't want to automatically turn away a significant number of potential customers. There are no potential customers that will be given with a significant number without a good reason. And when a unique key is used in a cookie and then used on the server, then a key into dictionary or the map will be given any type of the server-side object that can be a part of the server state, session state that will be enabling the environment, enabling the ASP and the JSP, that is active server pages and the Java server pages. And it is very effective or very much effective and flexible also. However, like any cookie-based method, it depends on the willingness of the clients to accept the cookie. And if this URL redirection is in the other case or class or session management, in this mechanisms, we are using the URL in the same system that are dynamically constructed to include the parameters that are either in the entire session state or either one of the key that is used in the server-side directory or dictionary. And each mechanism has a trade-off. Each mechanism has a dictionary in the memory for every user of the system. That will be very expensive if it never expires. And for this practical reason, most session dictionary are removed when the application is either finishing the process or the stores or using the system for a set period of time. And the session timeout value of the 15 is also typical. That will be given for the client state on the server that is almost always an issue in the web application. That is a web-based dictionary that is finishes the program within a set time period within the duration that is given, that is known as a session. We can say that it is a session that is used in the ASP or the JSP, but these are the web applications also that accept the cookies. Next is how to enable or enabling the technology. So whatever the technology we have, whatever the data we have that enable the technology for the web application that are varied and differentiated by the payers, by the principals, or by the partially with the vendors. And this enabling technology are in part the mechanisms by which web pages become dynamic and respond to the user input. And one of the several approaches to enabling a web application that is earlier involved with the execution of a separate module by a web server. And instead of requesting with the web server formatting page,